Now, we've got some cars that are out on track. We've got Indy cars, we've got Formula One cars, we've got a 76 Lotus Type 77 here that is also being displayed, and some, like I said, are static on display. They won't be run. Some are on track, as you can see. Scott Durnick is also out there in a Dallara GP2. We've also got an Arrows footwork. I haven't seen that on track yet, and I think that has just been displayed actually quite close to where we're sat here in the media center. And that's about it on the Formula One cars. We've got a great group of McLaren Indy cars here this weekend, including a Johnny Rutherford, three-time winner. And it's easy to forget that McLaren also dominated IndyCar back in the day as well, back in the early days anyway, of Penske and IndyCar and McLaren coming together in IndyCar efforts. Johnny Rutherford, perhaps the most well-known winner, but there's been others. And, of course, currently, McLaren back to winning ways in the Arrows McLaren team. And Tony Kanaan, the vice principal of Arrows McLaren, here this weekend and has been out and about. He even did a Trans Am race yesterday, his first ever. He jumped in Parnelli Jones, who we sadly lost in June this year. And now we're starting to see the Jaguars out and about, and I can tell you a little bit more about their history too. Because we've got some fantastic cars. We've got a 54 D-Type XKC chassis 403 and was one of the second of the 6 factory team cars that raced in the 1954 Le Mans race by Sterling Moss and Peter Walker. He actually DNF'd, did that car, and Moss, though, still set the speed lap record of 172.
This is the car, and
that
was the exact car that I was chatting to Terry about yesterday, which was interesting. I said to Terry, can you imagine in 1954 or 1955 doing 170 miles an hour in anything, let alone an open top car with a steering wheel the size of a dustbin lid?
And probably not a full lid. He was probably in a half shell like Sterling used to open
face helmet and a scarf to keep the dirt out is what it would have been, wouldn't it? And it would have been. But what's interesting here as well, Johnny, we're looking at what is a short-nosed D-type, the cream-coloured one on the inside, and then the long nose behind us there. And you can tell the long nose with the bigger fin behind the driver's head as well, which was interesting. They kind of, when they designed them, they started out like the cream-coloured one there, the number 54 car, and then they became the version which we see behind, which perhaps is more familiar or more instantly recognisable.
Another D-Type out there was actually in the 1956 overall winner of the 24 Hour of Le Mans. Think about that, folks. We have the actual 56 winner here. And it was the first customer car sold, dispatched May 5th, 1955. And it was actually sold to a Courier Cos. And if you know your racing, that's the Scottish race team. And it raced from new, and his most famous success was that win in 1956, driven by Ninian Sanderson and Ron Flockhart. Now, talk about something completely different. How about that? Coming up the hill.
Oh, what do we got behind us there?
Old and new, passing that. It looks like a GT40.
I think a GT40. That display of GT40s that's in the middle of the paddock.
Yeah, there's a bunch, right?
Yeah, there's a load of them. There's about 10 of them, I think, parked up, and they are looking just great in the California sunshine, as are all of these cars this weekend. You just can't. I'm walking around with a television crew, but everywhere you point a camera, there's something great to look at. And also, as well, full credit to all of the photographers that are running around getting the images from this weekend, because I have thoroughly enjoyed looking on social media, on the Instagram, on the internet. The photos that are coming out this weekend are second to none. There's some great guys doing some great work here.
You know, going back to the GT40 display, there's not only the display, we've got several cars in different groups. And when you look at the history, and you know that you love your Fords, but we've got Fords that, you know, go all the way up to, 2019. And they are still Ford GTs. Kurt Knight's got one, the GT05. And then we've got GT40s that were mid-60s and were at Le Mans.
Fantastic.
One crashed in practice, in fact.
Yeah, really, really fantastic and an iconic car. And certainly if I, had the deep enough pockets and the big enough wallet, that's probably where I'd go shopping first.
We'll also have some hypercars out later as we take a look at the 54 yet again. And these are just absolutely, this display, not only for the drivers, it's a thrill, but for us to see these cars, absolutely fantastic.
And you've been enjoying having a good chat with your pal James Alder.
Oh, he's been in and out.
He's been in and out, isn't he?
Yep.
And
he had a good run again.
Did he?
Yep. He was fighting with his good buddy. Now, here's your favourite car.
Oh, here we go, here we go. So we got Gateway Bronco then. What we're looking at here then is a Shelby branded Bronco from the guys at Gateway Bronco. I spoke to Seth Baguette yesterday, who's the CEO and founder of this company.
You're not telling me Shelby had anything to do with the Bronco. How did they wangle that?
I'm not sure, but Seth is good pals with Aaron Shelby right now.
There's the connection.
Yeah, exactly. Who's a top chap I was lucky enough to chat to once again in August. Who's driving that? Is that Jensen or is that Ramon Grosjean in that?
Well, Roman Grosjean, Roman was going to do a rally car. So
was he? I wonder who's driving that, because that looks like a very professional race suit and helmet,
It's definitely a very good racing driver, for sure, yeah.
I do apologise, folks. We're sitting here in a lofty commentary position, but we haven't quite got all of the info on who are the drivers and all the cars at this point.
Going back to your discussion about Jeffrey O'Neill, that was what I love about his organisation. He came into the booth earlier, holding his cigar, having a good time. But he likes to riff. He likes to say, hey, how about you get in that car?
I know, that's what he does.
And that's what makes the event. People get to do surprise drives. Well, like I said, Tony Kanaan driving Penele Jones's Trans Am car to a podium from 13th yesterday. These are the stories that make Velocity Invitational what it is. And long may it continue. But it isn't easy for a commentator to work out who's in the car at what point, because it could be anybody.
Yeah, it could. But we've got to talk about this Gateway Bronco, because if you are at Sonoma this weekend and you haven't walked to where their booth is, you really should go and have a look at them, because what you've got here is the classic lines of the first generation of Bronco, launched in 1966, running to, I think, forgive me, but I think about mid-70s. But what you've got here is the classic styling from that, but every bit of modern engineering you could ever expect to have.
So it's a retro.
It's the body is retro, and therein it stops. Under the hood, you've got huge power. You've got all the safety of a modern vehicle. You've got acceleration like you're never going to know, and handling like you're never going to know. Look at this. Look at this. And just something else. The craftsmanship on these is incredible as well, Johnny, because if you do, I love a Ford Bronco, right? I'd love to own one from the late 60s, but if you drive it in 2024, it feels like a vehicle from the late 60s, right?
Right.
So you want the styling, you want that retro vibe, but you want the modern vehicle.
Yeah, you want to hit the brakes and know they're there.
Yeah, exactly. And then hit the loud pedal and know it's there, right?
Yes, exactly.
And that's what Gateway Bronco are doing. So go and chat to Seth and Lisa and the team at Gateway Bronco, because you're going to have your mind blown. And if you get a chance to drive one, then that's a whole other story, because go and do that as well.
Yeah, and if you can't afford to buy a Bronco, hey, head down to Grand Prix Originals. Jonathan Seiger and the team are selling away. And I know it's hot, but they've got some great jackets that'll be good for the winter coming up. And I bought one myself, and they are lovely. They've got the Steve McQueen.
You look very stylish in
Michael Delaney kind of doffed their cap to the Le Mans famous film, and of course all the Gulf colours. They in fact sell and are the official apparel company for Gulf apparel here. There's also, I don't know if you've had a chance, but there's that simulation. They've got several simulators from Williams F1, and I'm really intrigued to know what, as the kids say, what the rig is, because obviously sims now are a big part of motor racing, both historic and modern day racing. I was noticing that several of the historic guys said that they got on iRacing. Scott Speed admitted he got up to speed for Sonoma on iRacing. So, it's a tool now that is always used.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And also, Scott Speed said, because for the hill climb, they're obviously running the circuit in the reverse direction. And to get ready for that hill climb, Scott Speed said he'd been doing it on the sim. He'd been practicing at home running the circuit in reverse, and that's how he got himself up to speed before he arrived here this weekend. So yeah, used by racing drivers young and old, novice and experienced.
Well, the king, Richard Petty, in the 43.
Probably the slowest.
He's not there now.
It's probably the most cruisiest ride that car has ever been on at the moment right now, I reckon, Johnny.
Yeah, no question. And, well, the king, as he's called. I didn't realise he'd been to Goodwood as well, Richard Petty. Yeah, he got around, but that famous 43 car that he always ran, and here's one version of it. And, storied history. NASCAR starting back in the late 40s, and so absolutely the eras that we're talking about from the late 50s to always, well, the various generations of NASCAR. It's been through ups and downs as NASCAR. I think the TV was a big thing for NASCAR. Once it got on TV, and now remains a stalwart of a Sunday afternoon for race fans here in the States, it was never going to look back. And even though its roots are in the South, and if you know your American culture, you'll know that NASCAR is known for that, and that's fine. Martinsville, you know, Talladega, we all know it. But when you consider someone like Jeff Gordon from Vallejo, just across the estuary, born there, his influence on NASCAR, his sort of approach to it from the California kid, then Jimmy Johnson, and now more recently, you know, Shane Van Gisbergen of V8 fame and from New Zealand. So, you know, NASCAR has gone through, and then there's people like Jenson Button and Daniel Kvyat and now Jenson Button, all trying out NASCAR. That's a beautiful car. And as you can see, a fantastic display. And as we continue, somebody else getting a nice little joyride. I know somebody's having a lot of fun down there is our girl Taylor. She's down there in Velocity Lane. Taylor, over to you.